the West Her hotline. I was thinking about how, I guess, unique maybe the draft is as a, quote, sporting event, in that it's really only for the fans and the players. Like, I asked Pete Gwelly recently, the COO of the Bills, how many people from the Bills go to the draft? And he said none, except for this year marketing people because they want to host a draft.
They're going to see how Green Bay does it and right, get some ideas.
Sal talked to Pete about that and many other topics fairly recently. I don't know, like I like the idea in theory, Sal, of going to a draft, but I don't know what I would do there. If I didn't have a costume, I feel like I'd be very out of place.
Right, one of those big chains with a team logo hanging from it. Yes, right.
I've been there. I've been to a couple NFL drafts. Hold on, let me just turn me up. Is that better? You guys got me now? Is that good?
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't want to be too loud or too okay. So I've been to a couple drafts. When my last year at Syracuse, I had gone to New York City for the draft, and it was at the time Radio City Music Hall, I believe, and it was great. Or the Paramount Theater, actually, MSG. It was great. I loved it. And that was, I think, Kijana Carter was drafted first overall. I remember that. Then I loved it so much, I moved to Florida in a few months later, and I went the next year. I drove up on a little vacation, saw some friends, went to Syracuse, went to the draft again. That was 96. That's Terry Glenn in the wide receiver drafts that year. 97, I guess it would be, right? 96 and 97, either way.
I think so.
Well, I'm getting my years mixed up, but you guys get the point.
96, I think, is Glenn, because that's Eric Moulds. I think that is 96.
Okay, that's right. So 95 Kijana, 96 Glenn, I think. So I went to those two drafts. Anyway, what's interesting is back then, this isn't the same necessarily, they had a table full of like people and employees of the teams, like you see at the Sabres draft, NHL.
Right.
But it wasn't the GM in them. It was just like kind of representatives, ambassadors maybe, people who they would send there and turn in the card. Because I remember one year, Jerry Butler was the Bills table, and I had to tell him, hey, I wore number 80 in high school because of you. Like, this is great, right? And he was like the guy sitting at the Bills table handing in the cards. So when Pete says no one, I mean, there are people there. There's social media people there. I think what he means is no one who, like, is in the front office making decisions, and from the higher ups of the Bills are there.
Right, because those
are people who represent.
Those tables aren't there anymore. Like the crowd is all fans up front, right? And and you're describing this scene like on the arena floor when the NHL draft would travel around to different arenas. And you've got the arena floor is the 30 teams. They've all got their delegations.
And that's dead now too.
I think they're doing a remote draft. This year for the first time, but there's already pushback because they had such a good time. I think they did the Sphere last year, was supposed to be the last one, and it was, I guess they pulled it off so well that now there's regret about agreeing to go remote, so they may revisit it. But anyway, it's changed in that way. So I don't know where to cut it here with like who actually is there for the teams, but like I know the GMs and all the football executives are in their home cities.
I think the term is simply football department. I probably should have said that if I didn't at the beginning. Like that's what he meant by like
the football department not going right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I get asked all the time about that. Are you going to Green Bay? Are you going to be at the draft? All the time, and I tell people no, because nothing really happens for me there. Now, I understand if a local TV station goes to the draft, especially if you're drafting high, because you get the video of it, the guy getting drafted, if he's there, if he's actually on stage. That's very worthy for them. For what I do, it's not, because all of the people are here. Like, the media room is packed. I will tell you, those 3 nights, especially Thursday night, there will be more people in that Bills media room than you see all year. Like, that's the night where everybody shows up. And we all hang out, we wait, we don't know what's going to happen. And then once it happens, later on, Brandon Beane comes out, he talks to us in a press conference after the draft. Everybody does their own wrap-up. I think Matt Bove and I recorded Always Game Day in Buffalo last year at about 12:30 in the morning, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, from down at One Bills Drive. And then we go home, and we're home at 2 in the morning, and you do the same thing the next night. And then the guy they drafted, he flies to Buffalo probably the next day, sometimes on Saturday, and then we get media with him.
What time would you run? Maybe don't answer for yourself if you don't want to, but thinking about myself, what time would I risk trying to get there by? You know, you gamble a little bit in case there's a big move. I mean, it doesn't seem likely, but if they trade up to 8:30, and I'm not there yet,
right?
Maybe you want to be there.
I know from history, Sal, you're there at 4 o'clock because we've talked to you at 4 o'clock on draft day. Like you are there. You put an 8-hour, overtime shift in, I think, to cover the draft.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Mike, it's so funny you're saying that. I'm thinking, what do you mean? Like, I'm there when the damn thing starts. You know what I mean? Like, I got to be ready. It's the other part of it is you just never know what happens beforehand, because what if there is a trade by the Bills in some capacity at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and all of a sudden Brandon Beane talks. You just want to be there for all of that to do the job right? And then as far as being at the draft itself, Mike, you said you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. I get it. As a fan, like, people are there just rooting on their teams. You have all these jerseys. I've seen it. But if you're working it and you're a media member, back then at least, I remember as a young guy just walking around to John Clayton or somebody else who was covering the team, the draft, like, hey, tell me about this guy. What do you think about the draft picks that they made? So there was that to do.
That would have been cool. Sal Capaccio on the Wester hotline. Let's get to today. So Brandon Beane is an annual thing, probably, like his sort of laying out his thoughts on the upcoming draft. What were a couple of thoughts of his that were maybe interesting to you? I thought, not that this is a bad thing, but a lot of what he said is what he'll always say, just kind of board coming to you and all that kind of stuff. Were there a couple things, though, that maybe stood out as different?
I wouldn't say different. I would say that he kind of hits on the same themes, right? Which is, we know from his history here of 7 years of drafting, the way that they operate. And I asked him, I actually had the first question. It wasn't intentional or anything, but I happened to be the first person to ask. And I said, tell us about your process right now, where you are. Where are you in the process with your scouts and your staff? First thing he said, Mike, they're doing mock drafts. That's what they're doing right now. They're doing mock drafts. And he said, on top of that, they're setting their board to make sure there's consensus from people. He said, you'll never have a perfect all-in-agreement consensus. There's going to be debates. That's healthy. But what they want to get is most they can a consensus of, is this guy a day one starter? Is this guy a primary backup? Is this guy, are we going to be able to get him a jersey on game day? That's where they're kind of leaning now, even though they already have kind of their board set up. They want to get a good sense of each player and where he fits there. So that was one thing. I thought it was interesting. I asked him a question that I guess it kind of surprised me. I've never thought of it this way, because he opened up the door with another question he had answered in some capacity. So the way I tried to phrase it, and I still don't know if I asked it the right way or he understood me the right way, but either way, I think so, which is, okay, I said, you have a franchise quarterback here already. You have Josh Allen. But if there's a guy coming out that you think is a franchise quarterback, does that impact your grade on him because you already have Josh? Because he said they set the board up according to the Bills, what we want, not what the league does. And I get that. That's interesting to me. But he said, right, it does impact the grade a little bit, but you're not going to take them anyway. But it does impact the grade. And that's interesting to me because of this. When we look at Chris Trapasso or Matt Miller or Mel Kiper, they don't do that. They don't have a team. All of their grades are always based on, you could probably take a 2025 guy and compare him to what you had in 2020 or 2015, and it's kind of going to be the same. It's going to be linear. I think from the sense I got from Beane and his answer, it's not that way for the Bills, simply because their roster has changed.
Right, so they wouldn't draft Cam Ward. Would he? Maybe his name would be up there, but No,
that's my point. I know he wouldn't draft him. What I'm asking is, here's a better way, and this is maybe why I'm confused. So
is he rated despite the fact that you have Josh Allen and you're not picking him? Like, I think you want to still have him up there because it helps the whole process, right?
I would think so. So I guess the best way, and if I get a chance to ask Brandon again, if I get a chance to talk to him, I think what I'll ask him is this. Listen, you were in Carolina when you drafted Cam Newton #1 overall. If Cam Newton came out right now the way he is, and you're the GM of the Bills with Josh Allen, do you still have him rated exactly the same grade as you did when he came out? Or does it actually impact it because you have Josh Allen?
I think you could grade these guys any way you want. That's what I would do. But how I would rank them would be what would vary based on my roster. Like, I might give Cam Ward an A, but I'm never taking him, and I can do whatever I want with him on the board.
Right. I might want to even have a pile, and I think teams do this. Like, you hear, different media people say, red flags. Teams have got this. Certain guys not on 10 teams' boards because they're worried about off the field or whatever, injury history, medical, whatever. Like, Cam Ward doesn't have any of those concerns as far as we all know. But I might grade him with whatever. If it's out of 100, he gets a 90. But I'm putting him over in this pile like he's committed crimes because I'm not picking him. He's in the I'm not touching you no matter what pile.
That's what I always figured, Bulldog. But I thought his answer was interesting, so I want to, next time I get a chance and he's not doing all this draft stuff, we have a chance to catch up, I want to ask him a little bit more about that because I'm just fascinated by that concept. Now, because of that, he was asked specifically, how often are you surprised players go really early than what you thought or a lot later they're still on the board? He said, a lot. And he said that's because we all have different boards based on our needs, right? And that's interesting based on how their roster is and how they see their fit for the Bills. But it's not just needs. It's what they think about the player, right? Because you just said it, Bulldog. There's going to be medical. There's going to be a lot of evaluations on the player that completely differ from team to team.
Do you know? Sorry, go ahead.
And he also, I think, added, I didn't hear this part of what you're talking about, but I feel like this rides in a sidecar with it. He talked about 3-4 versus 4-3, right? We're going to, all teams are going to have different grades on guys, depending on how they would rate for us. Like if you've got a 3-4 guy that just isn't going to fit in our scheme, the grade is going to reflect that. Whereas 4-3 guys are going to be, that's more useful to us, and that is reflected in that grade. So the grade, the way he's talking there and what you're referencing sounds a little less objective, I guess I want to say. Like it's not because you're talking about what how does he rate for us, and that's it.
Yes,
not just in the league. How should this guy be respected, and where should he be picked within the league? It's more just these guys fit what we're doing, and therefore their grades are higher.
100% on and off the field as well, as you know. So that was interesting. So that was I thought an interesting conversation and part of it. The James Cook stuff was also interesting. I've heard you guys talking about that. He's not here this week, and as you heard the soundbite from Brandon Beane, he said, "Don't assume that it's because of the contract." He said James has not told him that. He said he still could be here next week or the week after, and he's still confident. Though he was confident James Cook is going to be ready to play. And also, on top of that, he was asked a little before this question. I don't remember his exact wording, but he basically said he expects James Cook. James Cook's under contract for this year, and he expects him to play on his contract this year, like the way it is.
That's it.
Look forward to him putting on our helmet again, I think was something that he said as well.
Can I squeeze in one more logistics question, please?
Yes.
How much information do you think NFL teams trade before the draft with each other? Like, does everybody just keep it all a big secret from all the other teams? There would be ways where you'd want to have conversations, I think, if I may, just like in a fantasy draft, where you try to feel out what's going to happen around you, only on a obviously much bigger scale. It comes off as everything is very secretive, these boards, and I'm sure the exact rankings often would be team to team, but I would like to think, too, there are times where, like, he gets on the phone with a few, maybe a lot, of other GMs and like, all right, what do you see happening?
I don't know about that, Mike. I think that it's pretty secretive now. I think there are conversations of, well, I mean, look, you call up a team. Let's say you call up Atlanta and you want to move up to 15. Atlanta might need to share with you, well, listen, we have a couple teams looking to move up, and maybe even they get specific, but I doubt it. I think you have to have that. And then as far as players are concerned, very little. That's why Brandon Beane said he's so stunned at some of these guys going early or some of these guys being late. Like, he's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that guy went there. Now, I will tell you, though, I have had many times over the years been told just through conversations with people about how guys were drafted, the process, and where they went. And at some point in the conversation, they would be, well, we had intel that this would happen. We had intel that this team would do that. Like, that's been a phrase used to me over the years, and I don't know where that intel comes from.
Yeah, you're right. The trade element makes it a little tougher to get on the phone with Atlanta, say, and ask them what they think is going to happen. They're so far from you that it feels to me like you could do that, but if everybody's trying to make trades work and maybe then it's not what I would have assumed.
I would guess that I also think I would expect that it's pretty secretive, like you're saying, Sal, as far as specifics on players. But that leads me to thinking, like, because I'm sure they talked to, and I think Beane even said this, right? The teams around them, like, you're going to want to have some idea what it might cost. Are you open to moving back? Are you open to moving up? Whatever it is, right? You want to just have some... some framework there so that and then, like, depending on how well you know the counterpart, right? Like, whatever the GM of this team or their whatever their executive staff is like, you might hang up the phone and be like, oh, they love this guy. I'll bet they love, and you're just sort of, you're not exactly going to your app to gamble on it. You can't do it in New York State nor as a team employee. But I just think those conversations would be fun to have internally about, what do you think the Vikings are up to? Or any team. I didn't pick them for any particular reason. It's just the one that came to mind. I would bet there's a lot of that because you're trying to, why are they doing mock drafts? They're trying to figure out what teams are going to do around them. What do they need? What does their history tell us? What kind of player do they like? Are they concerned about off the field stuff as much as maybe we are? What like that kind of stuff.
That's the essence of mock drafting.
Right.
Isn't it? Like just putting all that. What kind of run game scheme do they use? Because certain guys
Can I add this too, guys? Listen, this goes to what you just said. Bulldog is right. But how about this? That's why you don't see scouts or GMs fired until the draft is over. Right? I mean, like, they're not letting their intel go to another team.
Right.
It's so secretive. Like, you can't do that. Like, you get head coaches fired. The head coach is gone. The offensive coordinator's gone. You don't fire GMs, or maybe sometimes, I guess, a GM, because he's kind of putting the whole thing together as it's going on. He's been involved in the team. That can happen. GMs. But I'm talking about the scouting staff and all that. They stay on through the draft because of this.
One more piece of this, too, is... Again, let's say the Bills are calling Atlanta to try to feel them out, not to find out what they're picking. Just what are you sensing here? Atlanta might think, what are you going to do for me? Your sense of your answers to these same questions do nothing for me because you pick after me. So what am I getting out of this transaction? A few minutes left here with Sal. So is there anything else on Beane that you want to bring up?
No.
Okay.
No, you guys, I'll if anybody wants, they can see a lot of stuff he said at Sal Sports on my Twitter feed.
Allen today, how was that?
Mm-hmm. It's good. I mean, Josh has always been kind of close to the vest and, not giving you too much. I don't know how to describe it. You guys know, you've heard from Josh many times. He's not a great soundbite that's going to cause some sort of controversy or big, headlines or anything like that. It's just about coming in and working and doing what he's supposed to be doing and, getting everybody on the same page and, glad to have all his teammates back. I guess the most notable thing was him saying that he didn't know Tre White was back on the team until he walked into the building yesterday.
That blew my mind, Sal. Like I can respect.
I know, me too.
I said this earlier. Like I respect going dark like that. If you can really do that, more power to you. But despite that, like not having social media, I can't believe 10 or 50 of his teammates didn't text him like, "Hey, we got Tre White back," because they're all not off. I'm sure guys on the team knew. So I don't know. That really surprised me. I mean, I admire it if like, that's really the case, because I just don't know how you could have avoided that news as the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. But what do I know?
I agree. For sure. I would say though, Josh has had an eventful offseason. Obviously, we know that he's planning a wedding.
Yep.
We know that his fiance is in a movie called Sinners, and he did talk about the movie and how everybody should go see it because it's awesome. And he was a part of that whole red carpet thing, and he said that was a different world, and it was a really interesting. And he said he was obviously very proud of her and her career and what she's accomplished. So I could see at least that he's not getting the normal kind of info that he might be, or with texts going on back and forth. But that kind of thing, I would think you couldn't avoid.
Everybody at your Easter table knew Tre White was on the Bills. Everybody at your table knew that.
Right.
All right.
The other thing from Allen that maybe was notable that fans, if they haven't heard about it, might like hearing is how he talked about Keon Coleman, wanting to like really put the work in. He said Keon told him he's already heavier. I am assuming that's working out, like he's adding muscle, and like I think that's encouraging, because he's been, ever since the season ended and Beane and McDermott talked like they did about he and Kincaid for that matter, been kind of like, all right, what do we really have here, and how alarmed should we be by how they sound about their top receiver pick from last year. And I don't know, I liked reading that. I liked hearing Allen talk about Coleman.
Yeah, I agree. That was good, and fans would probably want to hear that. And he also said the same thing that McDermott and Beane have both said. And he kind of did it with a pretty strong tone of, hey, he's still really young. Like, let's remember that. You know what I mean? Like, it was a point he made. I think he wanted to really make sure he made, which was, you have to remember, he's really young still, you know? So that was interesting as well.
I just want to say that I do remember that. It's never lost on me that the guy we're criticizing is only 1 year in the league. Maybe there are fans that just completely blow past that, but it is a thing you hear. Sal, one more. I don't know if you thought about this at all, but today I saw a list of odds on which veteran player will be traded first Thursday night. It's a pretty good list of names. I mean, we've had some big player moves in this way in recent years. Like A.J. Brown, for one, getting traded for a first. Maybe a first and a third in that case. The favorite is Jair Alexander. I've read that this is a Green Bay cornerback, prominent player. I've read that Green Bay would take a day 3 pick for him. I don't know the cap stuff, but Mark Andrews was the second favorite, along with Trey Hendrickson of the Bengals. Maybe you have a thought. I mean, the thought of Alexander and the Bills has passed my mind, thinking about their need at that position, relatively speaking. Have you thought about this market at all? Not the betting odds exactly, but just sort of who might be moved. Hendrickson's been a big name for this offseason.
I think Jalen Ramsey should be on this list. Maybe not draft weekend, I guess. Maybe that's just too much for a team. But it seems like we know that they're looking to trade him. I think Tyreek Hill should be on this list. That could very well be something, remember? Okay, there you go. I would think that. It's interesting with Alexander, phenomenal talent, really is. He's just had trouble staying healthy, guys. And I think that another team would have to have a little bit of caution there. But, man, he's a fantastic player, of course. You know, you always have to remember with any of these trades that happen, this is the Ramsey point. I was doing a Las Vegas radio spot yesterday, and they said, Jalen Ramsey, he's available. Do you think the Bills would do that? They're looking for a corner. And I'm like, why would the Dolphins trade him to the Bills, first of all? I don't think they would want to do that. But I don't know, man. You also got to pay these guys, right? Whatever their contract is, or a new contract. In some cases, that's the James Cook thing for me. Like, I don't know why anybody would do that. So it always makes it a lot more difficult, which goes to your point, Mike, which may be why a day 3 pick is why you get a guy like that, because the more you have to pay him, the less the compensation is going to be, and the inverse is correct.
Yeah, right. Ramsey is on the list, too. Micah Parsons makes it at plus 5,000, and Cook is not listed for what that's worth.
Okay. I also don't think James Cook will be traded draft weekend. I don't think the Bills have any intention right now on trading James Cook. Who knows what happens through the offseason, how all of this stuff goes, but based on just how I think the Bills operate and based on what Brandon Beane said today, I'll stick to what I've said to you guys all along. I think the most likely outcome is him playing on the final year of his contract.
I do too. I'm so glad you mentioned this again, because thinking about Beane and how he sounded about Cook, I think heading into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you'd want to have as much information as you can get. Now, they don't have to share it with you, his agent or Cook himself, but like if he's planning on going to the mattresses here, then that would impact my draft planning, I think, to some extent. So I wonder how much Beane really knows from Cook's camp about what his plans are. But I would definitely want to ask. Like, I want to have as much assurance as I can. Like, look, we couldn't agree on this, but are we going to have a problem here? Because that could alter what I'm going to do on Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, I agree that they'll probably want to at least have that in the back of their mind. I would think that what they feel about Ray Davis and Ty Johnson and what they have already could impact that. They just did take Ray Davis in the 4th round last year. Let's remember that. So, yeah, you're going to want to at least have that as a backup. Man, I still don't know if I would see it happening early. You'd have to take a guy in the first 3 rounds, considering the running back room they have, to take a guy in the first 3 rounds, I think that would be a story, and that tells you something.
Exactly.
They're going to take anybody, guys. I think it's got to be on day 3, and we're probably just talking about, depth piece, backup when it comes to that. That being said, I will say real quick before I go, I did ask Brandon Beane, do these 6-game suspensions to Michael Hoyt or Larry Ogunjobi affect anything about their prep this week? He said no. He said you have to treat them kind of like an injury that they'll be back from after 6 games.
Sal, thanks. We'll talk tomorrow if you have the time.
I will.